Hi everyone, welcome. Great to see you all. This is a pretty weird time with what's happening in the world today. There's no doubt about it. I have two daughters in Israel. One meant to be leaving tomorrow, but her flight was cancelled because Ben Gurion, as you know, was a little under attack. So they pushed off her flight. So things are upside down in the world today. That was yesterday. That's right. But she's meant to fly tomorrow, and now they've had to push it off.
But the flights they're still
Not united. They're pushing them off. They're pushing them off, yeah. So, Baruch Hashem, no one was injured too badly in that attack. Also, I want to talk about someone who was lost from the Jewish world, someone I knew quite well. I knew of him, and then I got to become a little bit close to him and his family over the past year or so. And that is Rabbi Shalom Lipska from Miami. I'm sure most of you have heard of him. We should say a few words in his memory. He really was like an incredible individual, a giant, really, to be honest, with what he achieved in his life. He died, relatively young. He was 77, 78, and what he became and what he built has become like the representation of success in communal life in America, and people have really tried to emulate that. When he turned up, it's hard to believe, right? Because we'll go to Miami. Every Jew goes to Miami on vacation, and it's Jewville. There's kosher restaurants, and there's supermarkets, and even the non-kosher supermarkets are full of kosher food, and there's a minyan in every block, and there's a Sephardi minyan, there's a Ashkenazi one, there's a Hasidic, everything you need. It's Jewville. You go at winter break, and all the Jews that live there are irritated because we've come and overtake the place. But let's be very clear. If you read any reports about when he turned up, 4 or 5 decades ago, the place was not only deserted of any Jews, but very anti-Semitic. I read an article today that said when he turned up, he could barely get a minyan. Actually, I heard it from him himself. I went to the synagogue a couple of months ago. And when he turned up in that neighborhood, he had to send the Rebbe, the Lubavitch Rebbe, sent him down and said, I'll be with you the entire time, you'll be successful, which he was. And he had to send his wife to go find an apartment, because if he turned up looking like he did, a religious Hasidic Jew, he would never have got an apartment to rent. That's how bad it was when he turned up. So it wasn't just like Judenrein, it was pretty anti-Semitic down there. And he single-handedly turned it around. He slowly got a minyan. I just heard one story I heard from him. Someone had to say Kaddish in the synagogue. So he couldn't get a minyan. So Rabbi Lipska went out into the street to find Jews. Can you imagine that? In Miami, in Bal Harbour, going out to find a Jew. Nowadays you can't find a non-Jew. But back then he had to go find a Jew. And he found some guy and said, are you Jewish? I need a minyan. I need a 10th. Man, this is before the big shul was like, what it is today. And he was walking around the street and he found this guy. He says, please guys, I'm Jewish, but I'm not interested. Right? He said, I'm not even married to a Jewish woman. I'm not interested. He says, I don't care who you're married to. I don't care we need you for a minyan. And the guy was arguing with him, and Rabbi Lipska didn't take no for an answer. That's how he became so successful. And he schlepped him in. And the guy came again and again and again. Eventually, I think he needed to say Kaddish himself. And eventually, I'm missing a big part of the story, but eventually he passed away himself, and he left him a vast amount of money, which helped him build the synagogue. I always say that if your synagogue is called the shul, and that's how it's known, it must be impressive. It's like if you're the doctor, right? If you're the rabbi, you've done well in life. Right? Yosef from the Torah was the tzaddik. He's good. Right? Bilam was the rasha. That's not good. So you really, right? And it's called the shul of Bal Harbour. So many more stories. Just want to mention him because also you should know something else he did. That one of the people, the main person who supports the Torah learning this year is this guy called Daniel S. Loeb. And he was the one who introduced me to him because he was greatly impacted by him. By the way, this guy, Dan Loeb, you see his name when you walk in, he actually saved his life. he was very, very sick with COVID. And Dan happened to be there and heard about him being sick and said, by the way, you should know, I know there's a medication which has got a lot of bad reports and a lot of bad coverage, but it's a great medication. And he gave it to him, and he was on the verge of death, they say, and it turned it around. Weirdly enough, there was someone in the room opposite Rabbi Lipska's room in the hospital, and that was Eli Beer, the head of Hatzalah. And he was also in terrible, terrible danger of dying. It really got to him. The early COVID was strong. He was also about to die. And then he met Rabbi Lipska and said, how can you do so well today? And he said, because I've taken this medication that Dan Loeb told me to take. So he says, I want it too. So they got it for him, because it wasn't so, it was still at that point, right? It was a little bit dodgy taking that medication. He took it. It got some bad press, right, from the liberal media. He took it. It turned his life right around. Right? So he saved a couple of lives. He started an institute called the Aleph Institute. Have anyone heard of this Aleph Institute? It really is an incredible work. I've met many people, unfortunately, who've been in jail, who've been helped by this institute. It's basically Jewish people end up in jail for whatever reason, and some of them not always in the best jails. You know, it can be very, very difficult. I just read a very, very long article, which over Pesach I read it, which I started to regret, because it was terrifying, about Jonathan Pollard. It was such a long article. It took me days to get through it. Terrifying. You don't know what's happening in the prisons out there. Baruch Hashem. Right? Most ones you know about, there's the Jew prison, there's Otisville, you know, there's a white-collar crime prison. There's not a lot of other prisons there with the Jews in them who are suffering greatly, unnecessarily, for the crimes that they've committed, like crazy stuff. I'll just tell you, in this article, Jonathan Pollard said, I was put in a prison that no one knows about, and I was put pretty much into a solitary confinement for 7 years. 7 years. Right? Where's the prison? He goes, I don't even know where it is. That's how crazy. I'm just letting you know, there's a whole background that we, Baruch Hashem, are not aware of. This institute gets to these places and helps the Jewish person out. Okay? Rabbi Lipska found that. That's an amazing thing. That's a tremendous chesed. People think, yeah, he did a crime, they're in prison, let them rot. It's just not right. Right? The amount of punishment you get for a crime has to be limited, especially here in the United States. So that's very, very, very important. So this is a sad time for that reason, and because we're mourning. But I want to talk to you for a few minutes tonight is the period we're in right now really a sad time? Are we in a sad period of the Jewish year?
No.
Yes or no? Put your hands up if you think this is a sad time of the Jewish year. Put your hands up. Put your hands up if you think it's a happy time of the Jewish year. You can't put your hands up for both. Okay. Truth is, we know the Omer, and I did in yeshiva growing up, is a sad time, a time of mourning. What I want to point out to you this evening, my dear friends, is that this is a really, really happy time. One of the happiest time of the Jewish calendar. Those 49 days between Pesach and Shavuot have always been really amazing days for our people. Let's think about it. Let's just backtrack. Let's take it back to Pesach for just a minute. It's okay, you don't have to go back to Matzah. But let's just see what the date is. The whole reason we left Egypt was to get the Torah at Har Sinai and take that Torah into the land of Israel. And for 1,000 years, those two dates, Pesach and Shavuot, as it's called in the Torah, Atzeret, which comes from the word la'atzor, to stop, those 49 days were always really happy, exciting days. It's all about the build-up, and I'm using those words by choice. They're a build-up to Shavuot, to Matan Torah, the happiest day of the Jewish calendar, which celebrates and relives and recreates and renews the annual giving of the Torah. So the days leading up to are really, really important. They're so good these days that we count them. Are there any other days that we count during the entire Jewish calendar? I mean, we know there are numbers between days. We know there are 30 days between Purim and and Pesach, we don't count them. We know there are 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the Aseret Yemei Teshuvah, but we don't count them. We just know that's the amount of days between. But when it comes to this particular period of time, we count them. And we count them very unusually. How do we count the days? Counting up or down? Up. Day 1, day 2, day 3. Why are we counting up and not counting down? What's the difference? Here's the question. It's not my question. What's the difference between counting up towards something and counting down towards something? Which is better? And why are they different? So when you count down towards something, what are you saying?
You're saying you want to get rid of it, like someone who's finishing a term.
I want to get, no, not like finishing a term, because every day is going to be precious.
The last day of
Like a school term. Yeah, very, very good. Right, not a term of office. Right. Well, it depends who's in office. Maybe you're counting down for that. When you count down towards something, what are you saying? I want to get to that point. I want to reach my birthday. I want to reach that vacation. But what I'm going to do is the following. I'm going to count down because I'm so looking forward to that moment that every day in between is annoying me. It's mafriya. It's blocking me from enjoying it. So there are 10 days towards my vacation. But I don't want 10 days. What do I want? 9 days. I don't want 9 days. I want 8 days. I don't want 8 days. I want 7, 6, 5, 4. It's like a launch of the rocket. I'm going to count down because each day is annoying me. It's bothering me. It's getting in the way. That's what counting down represents. We do not count down. We count up. That's very, very weird. If you're looking forward to something like Shavuot, why are you counting up? It's a great question. It's not my question. The Sefer Chinuch tells us. And what's the answer to that? Because when you count up, you're saying that each day is important. Because I have day 1, but I have day 2 as well. And day 2 is only day 2 because day 1 was day 1. And I get to day 3, so I'm getting close to my goal of 49. But day 3 is still only 3 because 2 was 2 and 1 was 1. I can't get rid of them. They are needed. It's just like building a tower or an apartment building or a skyscraper. You want to get to the penthouse. Who doesn't? But you can't start at floor 50. You've got to build floor 1. Actually, you need foundations first. That's another thing. Right? The foundations are leading up to that point. Right? That's Pesach. First day of Pesach is a foundation. And now I've got day 1, which is floor 1. And I can't just jump to floor 2. I need floor 1 to get me to floor 2. My goal is to get to the penthouse. So every day ends up building and coming on the back of the preceding one. So when it comes to Pesach to Shavuot, we're building up. And these are happy days. Actually, they're so important that the end day, which we call Shavuot, is called Shavuot, which means, what does Shavuot mean? Weeks. What a strange name for a holiday. Why would you call a holiday weeks? It's one day. It doesn't last for a week. Definitely doesn't last for 2 weeks. So why are we calling it weeks? Because it's all about the build-up. So the build-up to it is what it comes. Now, Shavuot we have to talk about another time, because Shavuot's a very strange holiday. So isn't it weird that most Jews you know celebrate Pesach, yeah? Do most Jews you know celebrate Shavuot? Maybe the ones you know, right? Because, you know, you're an affiliated bunch. But most Jews out there celebrate Pesach. Most do not celebrate Shavuot. If you mention Shavuot to people, they're like, Shavuot? They don't even know what it is. They have no connection to it. Why is that? Why is that? I'm going to give you a few reasons. And it's going to be important, although we're not there yet, because we're in the build-up towards it. So what is it about that day? So it goes like this. Shavuot hasn't got a name. It's called weeks, thanks so much. It's called weeks. Weeks refer to the days that come before it. So you have a holiday with no name. What's the date of Shavuot? Where does the Torah tell us the date of Shavuot? It doesn't have a date. So no name, no date. That's interesting. Every holiday in the Torah has a date. Even the rabbinic holidays, Purim and Chanukah, have a date. Comes along Shavuot, no day. So no name, no day. What's the mitzvah of Shavuot? What's the mitzvah of Shavuot? Is there only one mitzvah we have on that day? No mitzvah. Rosh Hashanah, shofar. Chanukah, nerot. Sukkot, daled minim, sukkah. Pesach, matzah, haggadah, maror, and all the rest of it. No mitzvah, cheesecake. Okay, fantastic. By the way, if you want a good cheesecake recipe, see me. I tapped into ChatGPT. I want a healthy cheesecake recipe. I've been practicing. I've got 3 cheesecakes already. Amazing. Worth my $20 a month just for that. Dayenu. I'm not even kidding. I have a video if you want to see it. Okay. But there's no mitzvah to eat cheesecake on. You don't want to eat cheesecake? You don't have to eat cheesecake. It's not, you got to. If there was a mitzvah cheesecake on Shavuot, how many eggs you put into it, how much flour, what kind of flour, the laws, what kind of cheese, is mozzarella going to be good? What can you use? Can you use cottage cheese? Hilchot cheesecake. Drive you crazy. There is no such mitzvah. Dairy products, true, but that's not the mitzvah. So no name, no date, no mitzvah. So strange. What's going on over here? By the way, the Torah doesn't even tell us that the Torah was given on Shavuot. Doesn't even tell us that. It tells us about Matan Torah, Shemot Chaf, Exodus chapter 20. Get a full description, but it does not tell us about the actual giving happening on that day. What does it tell us to describe the holiday? That on this day of Shavuot, you're going to bring 2 very important words. A mincha chadasha. Mincha chadasha. What is a mincha? An offering. Chadasha means a new offering. That is how Shavuot is described in the Torah. A day of a new offering. Those are 2 very important words. You've got to know them. What's it referring to? So on Shavuot, you bring, or they brought in the Mishkan, and the Beit HaMikdash actually, a wheat offering of 2 loaves, shtei lechem, and they were leavened. They were chametz. Pesach, no chametz. Shavuot, chametz. And there was 2 of them, 2 wheat loaves. That's what was brought because the wheat harvest has culminated. It came up, ready to go. They made the loaves. You have mincha chadasha. Say the rabbis, the words mincha chadasha are actually code words for Matan Torah. What does the word mincha actually mean? A gift. Chadasha means a new gift. Say the rabbis, the Kliyakar and others, you know what these words are telling us? That you have to remember that on Shavuot, we all received a new gift called Torah. And it can't tell you that the Torah was given on that day because what would you do? You would think that the Torah should only be studied on that day, right? You don't eat matzah the rest of the year. You don't sit in a sukkah the rest of the year. You don't light Chanukah candles the rest of the year. So the Torah said, by the way, that's the day the Torah was given. You would think, fine, I'll study Torah one day. It sounds weird, right? But it could have been. It could be that this is just another time. Once you study Torah and that's it. Make a lot of yeshiva boys happy, or maybe unhappy, depends who you are, right? And that's it. So the Torah says, no. It needs to be mincha, a gift that is chadash, that is new to you every single day. It's not limited to one day. So code words are used to describe the giving of the Torah when describing the day of the giving of the Torah. Relates to that day itself.
Isn't the kind of code and the mystery also in line with the theme of Shavuot?
100%. 100%. There's a lot of, first of all, it's an agricultural holiday, right? Because agriculture is new and it gives us life, and there's a lot to that. No doubt about it. But it's also a newness that we need to put into it. Okay, fine. So let's go back to the Omer. So we're building up to that point, and we can't identify the day itself, but we can identify the build-up towards it. And the build-up itself is the thing. It is the thing. Do we count the 50th day? No, we don't even count the day itself. We count 49 days, and then that night becomes Shavuot. You don't say, Hayom Yom Chamishim. We can't even put a number on it. Oh, and the most important thing, where was the Torah given to the Jewish people? Where was the Torah given to the Jewish people? On Mount Sinai. Where is Mount Sinai? Don't know, don't care. We don't care. Isn't that crazy? If you went to Mount Sinai, let's say I could identify Mount Sinai to you, which, by the way, there are people who said they have. And I were to schlep you, and I say, let's go to Mount Sinai. Right? Some say it's in Saudi Arabia or Turkey, wherever it is. And I say, I got absolute proof, this is Mount Sinai. What would you do if you were to visit Mount Sinai today? Would you worship over there? Would you make a special bracha over there? You would do nothing. Set up a Coke stand, t-shirt company, like all the Israelis, like in all the malls, you know what I'm saying? A t-shirt company. I went to Mount Sinai, and all I got was this lousy, remember that? They still sell those? All I got was this lousy t-shirt. I grew up with a lot of those, by the way. Right? And I grew up there, and I went there, and that's all I got. That's it. It's meaning. The location is meaning. What happened there 3,336 years ago, that's important. But the location itself is no relevant. Why is that? Why has that mountain got no relevance to us, and yet the site of the Holy Temple that also is not there right now is still meaningful to us, that we're willing to pray around the mountain to this very day? My question is, what's the difference between Mount Sinai, that has no relevance to us as a location, and Temple Mount, which has a vast amount, although the temple isn't there anymore? What's the difference? Because on Mount Sinai, we didn't do anything. We just received the Torah. There was no human input. We're here, give it to us. As opposed to the temple, where we chose it, we went there, we built it, and we prayed there for 1,000 years. The Kedusha that still exists on Temple Mount and the surrounding area is always going to be there, especially the Western Wall, which is why we give the Western Wall so much prominence. By the way, people think there's plenty of walls. There's a Southern Wall, there's an Eastern Wall, there's a Northern Wall. They're all still there. Why do we give so much precedence to the Western Wall as a side point? It's a good point. Why are we so obsessed with the Western Wall as opposed to any other walls? Why is no one standing at the Southern Wall like, please Hashem, give me parnasa, shidduch, putting notes into the Southern Wall? There is a Southern Wall. What is it about the Western Wall? 2 answers. Probably more, but 2 that I know of. One is that it's the closest in proximity to the Kodesh Kodashim, the Holy of Holies. That's why it's important. That area retained its Kedusha because we built it, we put the stuff in, and 1,000 years of prayers stayed there. Another opinion is because it was Jewish people who built it. Right? And specifically poor people put their effort into that area. I heard that from someone. I never saw that written anywhere, but I heard that from a good friend of mine who's a tour guide over there. Maybe he just needs something to talk about, I don't know. All right? But definitely the proximity. So the proximity to the Kodesh Kodashim, where it stood, and where it still is still there, still palpable, so it retains its holiness. And when you go there, you feel it. And then you go down, and you make a left, and you get to that area where the women are really headbanging, right? That area is extremely kadosh. I mean, according to some traditions, the Ark of the Covenant was secreted in there. It's there somewhere, but in that area, just deeper down. And maybe that, I think I mentioned this before over here, that massive rock that every tour guide always talks about, this is a 500-ton rock. He has one little birthright kid at one end, one birthright king at the other, right? And they're standing how big it is. That's a very, very big rock to put in the middle of a wall, isn't it? It's not at the bottom, it's not at the top. What's it doing over there? So some say that's actually the safe key to where the Holy of Holies was, and the Ark of the Covenant is secreted. We'll find out soon when Mashiach comes. He's going to have to get the key in there, B'ezrat Hashem, and boop, open it up. 500 tons, it's going to have to happen because we're going to need our Aron Kodesh. Okay, fine. So we're back. So now Shavuot doesn't just represent a day the Torah was given, but the place itself is irrelevant. So it has no name, no mitzvah, no date, and no location. We don't even care where it was. It's mysterious. It's all about the build-up. So the build-up is good. So why are we mourning? Why are rabbis walking around with extra long beards at this time of year? Why are we not doing weddings now? Engagements we are doing, by the way. right? You know that. You're allowed to get engaged. Why are you allowed to get engaged and not get married? It's also a happy occasion. Anybody know the reason to that question? Why do you allow engagements and not weddings? Someone else may take her or him. Two-way street, Jonathan. Right. So that's the answer. That's the actual answer. The answer is that someone else can come along and, or as I say today's day and age, it's the opposite. Someone goes like, oh, I'm not interested anymore. So I say today it's the exact opposite. You got to get them together. You got to boop. Right. No backseas now. You're engaged. Okay. So that's what we do. So there is a definite element of mourning that's added. But I want to point it like this. This is how I depict it in my mind. I always did as a kid. This is the 49 days. They're happy. Okay? Something happened that we're going to talk about for just a few minutes, because we don't have long left, that cast a shadow on top. But if you remove the shadow, the happiness is still there. It's not like things were going normal, like regular days, and then something bad happened, and then the badness went away, and then you're left with regular days. That's not it at all. The days, in essence, we're in are happy, growth, exciting days. Happens to be, and it's not a coincidence that what happened to be occurred at this time of year, which we're going to talk about, happened to cast a shadow on top. But eventually, on the 33rd day of the Omer, we're going to boop, take it off, and suddenly it becomes happy again. Happy again, not a new happiness, becomes happy again, the way it's meant to be. The original happiness comes out of these days. That's the important point that people have to realize, that most people do not. You said to most Jewish kids in yeshiva, Omer, happy time or not, and they'll say to you, it's a time of mourning. It's not. It's a time of absolute joy and excitement. So much I'm counting the days to get to Shavuot. Happens to be something bad happened, and what was that bad thing? Most of you know, but I'll say it again. There was a great rabbi called Rabbi Akiva, and he saw the destruction of the second temple. He was there. He literally, the Gemara in Makot tells us, he literally saw it. We just finished that Masechta in the Daf Yomi. He literally saw it. And everyone was crying, and he's laughing. It's the whole story of what that's about. We'll leave that aside for just a moment. He had many, many students. Many rabbis had many students. Why are we so obsessed with Rabbi Akiva and his students? What's so special about him and his students? And why were there so many? Why do you have so many students? Anybody know? What was he trying to do? People don't realize, he was trying to do something with all these students. The fact that he lived at the end of the Second Temple period and ended up being killed by the Romans is not a coincidence. He was preparing a generation of galut rabbis, diaspora rabbis. He was like, we're about to be kicked out. He saw the writing on the wall. He understood they're about to be kicked out. So he said, I'm going to have to train rabbis who are going to become the rabbis that are going to lead every Jewish person wherever they end up around the world. That was the whole idea. He was creating a Lubavitch movement. Let's get them out there. Let's train them at 770 or Morristown, wherever they are, right? And let's get them spread out. He was starting the Ovadia Yosef school of Sephardi Rabbanim that would go out to France, to Italy, to New York, or wherever they were, and create a legion of rabbis to help these Jews who've been exiled. Because once the Jews get out of Israel, they're not speaking the original language, they're not going to yeshiva, they're now being persecuted, they're trying to make a living out of nowhere. It's a whole new beginning. So Rabbi Akiva was like, I've got to train these rabbis. And then what happens? And then during this period of time, over the entire period of time, until the 33rd day of the Omer, there was a massive plague that killed them with their version of COVID. And they all died of something called askara. They choked to death. Whatever that disease was, it happened at this time. And the rabbis start to scramble to find out. It's too weird. All these rabbis, all of his students, who he trained, and these are great people, who were out there ready to create, it's going to sound crazy, a new type of Judaism. Right? He was creating a legion of rabbis to open up Chabad and Sephardi and Ashkenazi shuls throughout the entire world. That didn't exist back then, I'm joking, but you get the idea. Right? There was no Sephardi Ashkenazi at this point. So they were going to represent all the Jewish people throughout the entire world until Mashiach comes, until the third temple is rebuilt that he knew was going to come, because the prophet told him. But there was a problem. They all died. Well, why did they die? So then there's a whole tumult in the Gemara. And the Gemara says, I'll tell you why. They were great. They were knowledgeable, but they were lacking kavod, honor one to another. Now, wait a minute. You deserve to die for that? Lo nagu kavod zelazeh. Were they kosher? Yeah. Keep Shabbat? Yeah. Were they killing each other? No. Torah mishpacha? Yeah. They were great people. They didn't give kavod to one another. Since when was that a death penalty? If that's a death penalty, we're all in big trouble. So I'll tell you what it is. It goes like this. And what I've told you already is going to help you figure this. You probably, in your mind, should have figured out the answer. If they're going to lead the next generation, if they're going to become the next generation, if they're lacking respect for each other, and that they did not have, that's what the Gemara tells us. I would never say that, but that's what the Gemara tells us. They never gave kavod one to another. They weren't going to qualify. There was going to be something major lacking from the next generation. Because a Judaism that's just going to be religious and frum, Shabbat, kosher, but not being nice to each other is not a Judaism. So in that case, it's hard to say these words, they deserve to die for what they did. So that's why they lost their lives. So we, thank God, hopefully, are not being in such big trouble for not being so nice to each other. But them, the leaders that would seep into their community, that would seep into the Israel, that would end up becoming all of Judaism. So they're all dead. Now let's go back to Rabbi Akiva. Imagine Rabbi Akiva for a minute. You've put in weeks, months, years into all of these students. And you've really created a movement. And then in one period of 33 days, gone. Done. Dayenu. What are you going to do? I'd be like, well, Hashem, I tried. You killed them, not me. I'm out of here. What did he do? He taught us a lesson in grief, in renewal, and faith in the human spirit, I guess you could say. He said, I can't do this again. I'm too old. I can't get a whole bunch of new students up. And just practically speaking, it's just not possible to recreate a new generation. So I'm going to pick 5 individuals. And these people there were many, many great people who lived in his time. We're going to have to assume that these people, and this is who they became, are going to help us represent Jewish history to the end of days. These 5 rabbis that he created as students, and he kept it at 5. And that's it. From 24,000 to 5 of the best people, we must assume, because he lectured about this the rest of his, Rabbi Akiva said, there is nighttime, there is morning. We all go through nighttime, and we hopefully get through to morning. But always remember to learn of what happens at nighttime. And that was his coded way of saying that we all suffer, but there's going to be good days ahead, but they're only good if you remember what happened during the bad times. Those are the words of Rabbi Akiva. Right? He kept saying, if you learn Torah when you're young, learn when you're old. If everything happens, difficulty at nighttime, remember morning will come, you have to plant seeds. These were his code words for, I've picked these 5 rabbis, and they are not only great scholars, they're really nice people who are nice to each other. Any Torah we've learned over the past 2,000 years have come from these 5 rabbis. Isn't that crazy? They literally restarted the entire Jewish world from these 5. Because each one of them had 10 students who learned from this one, and they maybe had 50, and then 100, and then it just multiplied. So every Jew today somehow is going to be able to trace their Torah knowledge. Not just that, there were many rabbis who survived. Not many, but there were rabbis that survived, great Torah scholars. But the Torah learning came from these 5. They continued the lesson that I want to bring out today. And we did start by talking about Rabbi Lipska. And I don't know if you saw, I wasn't in Florida for the Levaya, but I watched it online. There were a lot of really upset people. Right? This guy was a legend. Right? He created an entire community. And then the leader dies. You know that it's a real movement when the leader dies and it carries on. A cult, once the cult leader is dead, organization's gone. Unless you manage to stick in his son who becomes a cult leader like his father, like North Korea. That's a possibility. I can't take it away from them. They did a good job. Right? You just put another statue of Un next to Il, or Il next to Un, whatever it is, and the whole thing can continue. Right? That's not easy, by the way. I give them credit. Trying to continue a cult takes a lot of work, my friends. All right? Because people have to buy into the next dude. If this guy was God, to the next guy has to be God as well. That doesn't happen overnight. That takes a lot of dedication and indoctrination. And paranoia, yeah, 100%. They did a good job of it. But it's not simple. The fact that great movements throughout Jewish history, that some have come and gone. The ones that have gone, were founded and led by one person. I wouldn't say they're always a cult, but there's definitely a cult of personality. And if the organization can continue after the death of a even very charismatic leader, it's a great organization. And I'm sure most of you are thinking of different organizations in your minds, that the great leader has gone and the organization has continued, and that shows that they may have had a charismatic leader who built it up, but the organization carries on. Because it wasn't about them. I met with a great rabbi many years ago, Rabbi Grossman. You've heard of him, right? The disco rabbi? I just finished with this quick story. You heard of him? Migdalor. He created school, yeshiva, outreach. It's unbelievable. And I met with him, and I took students to meet with him. Actually, I took him specifically. He has a room for kalot. Women are about to get married. You're a kala. You don't have... And they created, honestly, a bridal showroom for them to come and choose dresses. Beautiful. Literally like Fifth Avenue style. And they walk in, they get it for free. It's unbelievable. Well, like a schlep you play, here, take your dress, right? It's for free anyway. The amount of chashivut and the beauty, everything about him. So he told us many, many great stories, which are miraculous. The guy's surrounded by miracle stories. They just happen to him, happen to people around him, and soldiers that he meets. But he did say one thing to me which relates to this. He says, the test to see if what we built was real over here is if it continues after I die. That's what he said to me. And it will, because it's not about him. All right? It's not about him. He's extremely charismatic. You just want to give him money. You just meet him. You want to write him a check. I wish I had that personality. He has that personality. He meets people on planes, has one conversation, they take $1 million. It's literally like that. You know that story, right? Can I tell you one quick story? I'm so sorry. Just one very quick story. I must say the story. I heard it from him, and he's written about it, spoken about it. You heard the story about him? He won the Israel Prize, which only the top elite of Israel wins. Rabbi Grossman. And he went onto a plane, and he has a ticket at the back of the plane. And Rabbi Grossman, this is, a rabbi, they love it. You got to go to business class or first class. He's like, I can't. It's embarrassing. You got to go with what? You, Rabbi, you got to go first class. So he decided to go to first class. So what does he think? What would I think? Oh, I get a good meal. I get a schluff. What does he think? Fundraising. Right? We're the rich Jews. First class halal. So he goes into first class, and he sees a couple sitting there, and they look rich. Big fat guy with his wife. That's how we described him. And he says, you know what? I got to do it. He starts schmoozing and kibitzing, And he says, listen to me. I don't know, maybe I have an orphanage, I have a yeshiva. Do you mind if I show you a little video about my organization? It's a long flight. What is it? Israel, 11 hours. Like, okay. This is back from Israel, by the way. Back from Israel to New York. Is this fine? You heard the story before? It's a great story. I heard it from him. Directly. I was there when he said it. So he had his little mini, DVD player, takes it out, puts the DVD in, you see it, and it's fantastic. I've seen the video. It's children, they're praying, there's crying, and this one's an orphan, right? Orphans. You can't not make money when you've got videos of orphans. It's just the way it is, He shows the video, and he leaves them there to watch the video, and then he gives them a little earbuds to listen to it on, and he goes back at the end of it, and he's thank you for watching, and he's trying to take, as he takes it away, he says he hits a button, and the seat goes back, something happens, and the drink spills on this guy. And he's like, oh, I can't believe what I just did. And he goes, he's helping him, and there's mess everywhere, and the wife there's a whole kerfuffle, and there's drink everywhere. And he goes, I don't know why, but I grabbed this man's fat head and I gave it a big kiss to apologize. Which, if you know him, that's the kind of thing you do. And he's like, what the heck would I just do? That's crazy. And he apologized, cleaned up. He says, forget about it. That was a big fail. He went back to his seat. 20, 30 minutes later, this guy makes his way over to Rabbi Grossman. And he says, I want to tell you something. He says, you know, my wife and I, we have no kids. And I'm a wealthy guy. And I came to Israel to find someone to give money to. And I couldn't, because I'm not a religious man. But I decided to go to the Kotel and pray to Hashem to lead me to a place. And we saw school after school and nothing spoke to us. So I decided not to give. And I went, this is what he told me. He says, I went to the Kotel, he told Rabbi Grossman, and I said, give me a sign. Give me a sign. May the right person come and just give me a kiss to tell me they're the person I should give my money to. And he goes, you're the guy. And he says, he gave him $1 million check. And then he told me later, I got much more out of him over the years. that was just the Forschbites, right? That was the Mana Rishonah. I got a lot more money over the years, right? The key to success for any organization, for any person, Rabbi Akiva tells us, and for, I'm sure, Chabad is happening in Miami, has lost their great leader, is it's going to carry on without them. That's the key. And that's the key to the Jewish people. We go through great, great challenges and difficulties, but the truth to our success is, even when we lose great people, we don't stop. It's not over. Moshe Rabbeinu dies, Joshua takes over, we go into Israel. Right? King David dies, King Solomon takes over. There's always someone to fill the void. You got to pick the right person. But there's always room for greatness to take over. It's never the end. There's always rebirth. There's always renewal, and there's always a future for the Jewish people, ad biat HaMashiach. We'll stop over there. Thank you, everyone, for that. Dinner is served, and Rabbi Abragamo will be speaking right after this.